Hello and welcome to On Air with the Lipstick Politico. Here, we delve into compelling conversations exploring the journeys of pioneering creatives, artists, entrepreneurs, and changemakers. I'm your host, Daman Thandi, and today, for our inaugural episode, we're honored to have screenwriter Atika Chohan join us.
I grew up in an environment, cultural environment steeped in patriarchy, and was compulsively guided by my sense of outrage and anger against infinite injustices that I saw as a young person. I'd like to go out there and actually change things through cinema that can be watched by many, and it can unsettle many, it can create discussions amongst many.
Hi, Atika. It's so wonderful and such a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me.
I'm so happy to be here. I've been a fan of Lipstick Politico. I follow up the updates. It's really smart. It is obviously pro-women, and it's also has a very recent, flavoring of wit, general affairs, and commentary. I really like Lipstick Politico as a handle. I've been following it for a while.
Thank you so much. That means a lot, especially coming from you, Atika. All right. You're a former journalist turned screenplay writer, best known for writing Indian cinema's most progressive, inclusive, feminist movies that are unflinching socio-political movies. These include Margarita with a Straw, the story of a young woman with cerebral palsy, Guilty, the story of a songwriter whose boyfriend is accused of rape during the Me Too era, and Chappak, of course, a film based on the life of an acid attack survivor. I would love to hear, in terms of the formations of who you are today, if you were to look back to some of the common themes growing up that were encouraged when you were younger, that led you to the path you are on today. What I'm asking is perhaps if you could tell us about some early experiences that shaped you. What were you like as a child? What impacted you the most and led you down this path?
I come from Old Delhi, and I grew up with a lot of, an environment, cultural environment steeped in patriarchy inside and outside the house. Delhi is full of crime, and sometimes the crime is, if it's not even physical, you live with the impending crime. You live with a sense of your life is constantly at threat, especially as a woman, as a young girl. So the perils of the city, you end up developing a sense of awareness. I don't know which came first, my heightened sense of awareness. Or was I born with it, or was it the city that granted me that, or was it my personal life? So it was in those early years, formative years, you really don't know what is guiding what. As a combination of that, as a young adult, I remember myself as someone with very heightened sense of awareness. I think it led to me noticing everything in micro detail. First, started recording or chronicling my thoughts on paper in a journal. I honestly look back that as the beginning of me compulsively needing to define my opinions at a very young age. I think my voice sort of developed there. The trigger warning is that these are not exactly very pleasant experiences. Sometimes the writers have some dark experiences from which they emerge. It's not like I've had definite help with a lot of counseling, healing, and so. But some of these experiences, of course, involve abuse, violence. I've seen it. It was a very crazy family, which is full of intellectuals, but also extremely violent people. So I grew up feeling a little, always on the edge. I think a lot of my sardonic perspective towards life and literature got auto-developed because of these crazy experiences as a child, young adult. I felt a little unhinged. I felt marginalized, but at the same time, I also felt very liberated because I was not expected to perform like any other person. I could do whatever I wanted. I grew up with a lot of rage. I became a journalist in Delhi, and there I was forming my identity and voice and shaping myself around these really brilliant people who I sometimes even now look back and I realize, why was I even there against such amazing minds? So some of these experiences, that early part of my life, was shaping me up for. As a young adult, I had to take decisions which were very unpopular at the time. I became a screenwriter at a time when it wasn't fashionable to be one. This was 15 years ago, in Delhi, and I was thriving and I let all of it go because I just knew my appetite was whetted for fiction, and I just knew it in my bones that I'm born for this. I had nothing to substantiate. I had no way to prove to anyone who asked me how you going to survive, especially for the kind of cinema that I wanted to do, like female-centered cinema. I have to say this, I was crazy. Passion can't be defined by logic. So it was just a need, compulsive need to express myself through storytelling. I didn't espouse feminism. Nobody espouses feminism. Feminism is not something that you choose. I honestly think feminism is nothing but actually a default form of humanity. For me to recognize the fact that I'm discriminated against in micro and macro situations of life because of my gender and of course other limitations. So I realized early on that there is a voice that is contending against these pushbacks. And I had that responsibility really owed to me. I knew that all of it was actually just compulsively guided by my need to create awareness about the injustices, especially around women. As I grew older and then I started educating myself and I began to put fact to intuition, I realized that it's all become like a data of sorts for me to cull from and to create. This is like a bottomless pit of ready stories, and someone will have to do this. I would just only identify myself as a writer and no one else. But from the outside, I was an independent writer because I created like nuanced writing. I felt I trained at film school. There is a reason I've inched into intelligent commercial or accessible form of cinema, especially in India. And there's a very conscious reason to do that. And that reason to arrive there is driven by my need to reach out to more people, because I realized that even though I had larger creative opportunities if I worked in indie cinema, I realized that not many people were watching that cinema. The satisfaction that I have received for my latest work, which is Chappak and Guilty, because it was accessible, it was told in a populist imagery, the vocabulary was mainstream. I realized the number of people who got impacted by it. I feel that for a few years, especially till I have a lot of young blood in me, I'd like to go out there and actually change things through cinema that can be watched by many, and it can unsettle many, it can create discussions amongst many. So there is a very conscious effort to marry myself to the mainstream so that I'm able to tell you stories which are otherwise not explored, that easily in this space.
And that explains a lot, actually, especially in terms of your non compromising attitude or where your strength comes from. In fact, I read a quote by you which said, I kept refusing the regressive films that came my way. I preferred to write a daily soap to pay my bills than a film that was outright sexist or missed the point completely. I wanted to ask you, how difficult was it then to make it in a film industry, especially given its proclivity to cinema that is typically very sexist, and you outright refuse to do such projects in the name of them being linguistic, non-inclusive? All this without a background or backing, being a complete newcomer. What did it take? I'm sure other filmmakers, writers would love to hear from you on this, because you do lose hope at some point.
It's largely hopeless. It feels even after all these films and 15 years of career and 7 credits, and like multiple projects right now in pipeline and development, it just still feels from time to time, and this happens quite often. for most, that would be a uniform experience for most writers, industry writers. That's just largely also the function of the nature of how things work in the industry. So that's one thing I'd like my, whoever is listening, that you will just get more used to this, the roller coaster, but it will never really get easy. It may just look like it's getting easier, but success or like semi success, it will never really get easy. If it's getting easier, you must check where you are at, because maybe you're doing something wrong. So there are some irrational ways to define the journey, which is sometimes you look at it as luck. People always compliment me for my filmography, like they are something stunning to post of. But I have to say, this is only one thing that I could fall back on, which was my perseverance. Because even for my talent, I must say this down, that I'm not a big fan of my own writing. I have an exacting standard of what good writing is. I don't think I'm really still like touching my own standards. So for me, anyway, like every day begins with struggle, and it's not just external; it's also internal. And it is so difficult to work on takes for other people, and then to combine it with your own voice, and to find a middle road, and to make it logical, and to ensure that it's not compromised at the level of politics, and it gives the right messaging, and it takes the world forward. So there are so many layers and so many boxes for the work to tick into, and then to find that one project which somehow satisfies all these needs, and then you move forward. And then those projects keep falling through the cracks because of the industrial situation that we are in. So of course it never gets easy. In my case, I mean, I don't know what exactly I was doing right or wrong, because I went to the film school. It brings certain allies, but at the same time, it also takes away a lot of people who look at you already as someone who's a film school pass out. So by the very nature that you're going to be idealistic, you're going to lose some prospective employers. Like I was literally very hand to mouth when I first came to Bombay. So for many years, so we kept doing that, and we just kept meeting the right people, kept watching the right films, keep going to the right circles, and you end up meeting people who are making their first stories into the kind of crazy cinema they want to make. And then that is how you find your tribe. Every time I had written a film which became something of consequence, only one thing that unifies the choices that I never really imagined it or chose them to begin with for the success that they will achieve. We only did it because we believed in those projects. Like if every time I started a project and someone would tell me this is not going to go anywhere. And that is exactly anyway what I was told for all the projects that I did, including Chappak, including Guilty. Because Deepika coming to Chappak was a happenstance. It happened much after the film was written, and it was not written for Deepika. It was a much purer, smaller project, So it was always supposed to be an indie film, and we never expected someone like Deepika Padukone to even like sit for a narration. So you know what I'm saying. So basically, none of the things as a core intention began with the idea that this project is going to give me material success. I guess the idea is to fail so many times that maybe coincidentally, by the virtue of some fluke, I think there are these minor successes that you will come along the way. And maybe perhaps just look at it like that.
I think I read somewhere that Michael Jordan missed 50% of his shots. At the end of the day, it's just a game of numbers. I think most people will even refrain from trying. But when you keep trying, when you go and put yourself out there, the luck element also increases because there's those many more shots you've been given. Your work comes with a trigger warning, and it's very heavy. Do you think the audience, especially after a pandemic, may seek lighter topics? And is that something you would even consider?
It's right. This is the first time I'm adapting an international show for Indian audience right now. It's going to be my first romance that I'm like for the first time dabbling with. And again, it is a romance with a political layer. It does kind of reinforce a man and a woman's perspective within the political drama that takes place, the politics of genders. So it kind of explores that. Having said that, it is also like heavily political and heavily sexual. If you ask me, I think I have brought a lot of lightness to all the dark subjects that I've done. It's like starting from Margarita to start to rating. I have been complimented for bringing a sort of easiness to the heaviness of the subject. So actually, the industry perspective of my collaborators has largely been that I make these subjects palatable. I honestly think I'm already on that path to consciously steer into projects which are away from it's not so much about my strength, but which are away from my experiential reality. It is an inside out process. The more I will heal, the more I will be able to develop an outlook towards life, which is more regenerative, more restorative, more holistic. I will be able to bring that to my subjects and to my voice. And perhaps on the basis of that, I may just move into either subjects which then enable me to tell those aspects of my experience more. So I think it's something that I just naturally gravitate towards. I think it's okay for me to oft repeat myself and like say the same thing because anyway, it's just once in 3 years that you get to hear what someone like me wants to say. So that my tribe is anyway so marginalized that there is no need for me to imitate that format because that format is already flooded. Mainstream is mainstream, as we know.
100%. I guess I was coming from the point of view that, we need your voice to be seeped into a larger audience, the mainstream, so to speak. And from that perspective, but having said that, the gravity of everything you deal with in your storytelling, what is the emotional toll of it on you?
It's a very good question. It's something that has been asked before, and that's why I know because I kind of like try to evaluate myself for this. How do I do this? Actually, maybe because I have so much experience to offer to the world, and with each time I get a heavy project like this, I actually feel relief at the end of it. And then when it's received well or it mobilizes some conversations and like it leads to a response or like it leads to some kind of like change in the world, I actually feel extremely gratified and light instead of the other way around. People think of it as that is it something that emptied you out? And in fact, it fills me in. It fills me in with a lot of joy. With each project, I feel light up.
So the process is almost cathartic for you.
Yes, it's very cathartic. It's a relief. The process itself is the tough part, like to engage with this on a daily basis. Of course, it is not easy. It's not like I know everything. I'm also discovering so much while dealing with these subjects. I mean, it's not like I'm an expert on or like the epitome of gender violence. Like, it's not like I experience everything. So for me, of course, it is the process itself is very difficult. The belief stays in you, and you actually try many years later over something you learn. In that moment, you know that this is for the sake of grace and dignity and the goals that you have around why you are doing what you're doing. There is no time for me to express myself emotionally. And of course, all of this takes. This is at least something that I process, unless there's a big one coming my way, which may just like throw me or I may have to take some time off. At this moment, I don't have that much problem with the psychological trauma of dealing with some of these subjects. What I find difficult to deal with is the rigorous nature of writing itself. It's a art as a crushing chore, and the fact that sometimes when you work on multiple projects and your bandwidth is always spread thin and your back takes a toll and your lower back is hurting and you are so for me, some of that a number of hours that you have to make yourself available for this as a physical activity, the number of sacrifices that you have to create, the fact that you have to create a certain kind of isolation for yourself so that you can focus on your work. these are for me the bigger challenges. These are the things that I find not tough exactly, but I find that this is taking a lot out of me for me to commit to this as a profession.
Okay, so I have this quote right in front of me. I hope it's not misquoted. So you said on record, all I want is to write for 8 hours and have sex for 2 hours.
Yeah, it's right.
Now I'm just curious, Atika, what does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just quickly say it out loud that it was a desire. I mean, that is why it's so like it's something to say in interviews. It doesn't get achieved. Neither can I write for 8 hours. How can I have sex every day? So, so that doesn't happen. But yeah, once in a while, like you get yourself a good date, and once in a while, you get yourself like a great writing project. So, when you get as lucky as that is.
So what does your day look like then on a regular basis? How do you spend your time? How do you go about allocating time to your day?
At this moment, it's fraught with deadlines and like really firefighting across projects on a daily basis. There are rewrites from some older ones and then the new ones. And so it's basically like largely on a good day, and my days divided between at least one session, 3 hours of writing on the next, meeting a deadline. And then I live with two cats, and I'm single. I live with two cats, and I have an autoimmune disorder which I have to nurse from time to time. So largely this, and then yeah, I'm like a bunch of friends who I meet. So that's it. It's actually a very monkish lifestyle. If there is anything I'd like to boast of, is that I have a very frequent and very consistent physiotherapy lifestyle because of my back, which I have to constantly, keep smooth. And so I do yoga 3 times a week, and I go for an hour long walk every day. And so these are the other things which I commit to much more than 2 hours of sex every day. That never happens, even though I wouldn't want it. I would never decline it. But never.
All right, so we're short on time, so I'm going to dive into the last 5 questions. 5 movies that shaped you as a person or left a big mark on you.
I'll just say, as a screenwriter, there are some films that I recommend to everyone because they're phenomenal reads on paper. First is Eternal Sunshine by Kaufman, Prisoners by a film directed by Denis Villeneuve. There is a writer called Matthew McDonough who has made In Rouge, uh, three billboards outside Missouri, and he's also recently written and directed The Banshees of Inisherin. Please download all the screenplays and see all the films. They are fantastic screenplays. They are the world's best screenplays. That writer is gifted. There is, of course, there are these industry favorites like Taylor Sheridan, who's written Sicario. I love Juno, especially as a screenplay. I mean, if you read the style, of course, Aaron Sorkin. You have to read the social network. You have to read some of some of the episodes of West Wing. Aaron Sorkin is God.
If you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, metaphorically speaking, what would it be and why?
It would say make mistakes. And why? Because I think that's what's going to make you right.
And that's a good one. All right. What is an unusual habit or an absurd thing that you love?
I don't know. One quality that I have is that I'm constantly curious. I'm constantly curious about why people are such douchebags and what is inspiring them to create that sort of, why are they making the mistake that they're making? Like for me, I just always like to pause and wonder why would have a person done something so compulsive and so dark. So yeah, So I think I'm very curious. I'm a little more curious than I should be.
What would your dream collaboration look like? If you could be collaborating with anyone all across the world, what would that be?
I'd love to write a film for Anurag Kashyap. I've met him many times and I never have been able to bring myself to do it because I think he's God, and I'd love to write a film for Anurag Kashyap. I'd love to write for, some of these fantastic young female filmmakers that we have in the country today.
And last question, Atika, before we sign off, what are the next projects you're working on? What are you excited about? Anything you can share with us?
There is a film called Agra, which I wrote 7 years ago, co-wrote with Feminist screenwriter quickly. That's ready. It's the post is done. The film is ready. So I maybe this year it's going to get dropped. Then there is a film called Not, which I have co-written with a first-time debutant director called Chappak, and it is produced by Dev Patel. A very intense relationship drama about an immigrant Indian couple. The story is set in Australia. I can't wait for the world to see that film. I have adapted a book for Soni Rajda. Again, like a very intense relationship drama between a mother and daughter. That's also something that I'm very excited about the world to see it. This is, again, I think for me, it's a big one because it's the first time I have adapted a novel for screen, and it's an Indian novel and something which had a deep impact on me as a young person when I studied in TU. So these are the three films that I know are two are in post, and one is the script is ready. So we know that these are sure shots.
Atika, you've inspired a whole generation of filmmakers by showing the way for possibilities in the industry. It's really been an honor to have you on the podcast, and I look forward to watching all your upcoming releases. All the best.
Thank you. Thank you, Dad. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in. You can connect with us on Instagram on our handle at Lipstick Politico, or leave a review. It helps us bring you more engaging content. Until next time, ciao.